Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Urban Legends of the Week video. I thought I would make a special one here for you fans out there because it has to do with a subject that's actually been asked several times. In this case, the notion of gravity hills. Like, can you please do a video about this location involving gravity hill and then another video about another different location involving gravity hills. So as a special treat, I thought I would make a video that not only incorporates around 7 examples of gravity hills, but in this case they have to do with the more obscure stuff involving variation, stuff that you and I maybe have not had heard of gravity hills, because there are definitely the more common ones, the more common legends, the more common examples to notate, but in this case I tried to pick the ones that stood out with variation, stuff that really came out original, little different types things. That way it makes you wonder that there truly are different versions of Gravity Hill. So let's go ahead and let's talk about first the urban legend known as Gravity Hill or Hills, and then I'll mention those 7 examples that all stood out. So what is in this case the urban legend known as Gravity Hills? Well, you and I have heard of them periodically, no doubt, throughout our lives. Those are those locations located in this case throughout either the US or multiple parts of the world that involve these weird activities whenever you happen to come across them, most commonly involving your car. And the most basic down to the simplest example is you park your car somewhere, leave it in neutral, and something will happen to it. Either it'll be pushed out of the way, in this case let's say out of the way of some railroad tracks, or it'll be pushed, in this case almost like an optical illusion, uphill. And of course that makes you wonder, what is going on. And the usual after effects of it are that people notate that there's these handprints on the back of their car, almost as if there was this unseen force doing the pushing. But in essence, that's essentially what the more common gravity hills are. Now, as far as the variations of them and the stuff that stood out was this. There are versions of these involving, in this case, stuff being pushed, but it's the people, or in other words, the reasons that they're doing the pushing, that truly stood out, or in this case it involves other types of forces altogether. So that when I was reading, in this case, I found this great website, weirdca.com. I'll include the link for it below. They included a whole bunch of locations there in California. Who knew that California had so many purported gravity hills? Y'all are pretty lucky in those regards, because you'll be able, those of you that live in California or are traveling to California sometime soon, y'all will be able to actually test these theories. Like here in Texas, the only one that I know of that really stands out is the infamous one in San Antonio. I don't think there's any other one that people tend to visit in Texas, but here in California there's more than a dozen. So it's practically a great field day, like let's say a day trip for those of you out there wanting to see these. But yes, the variations of them are as follows, and they are all based on the examples. For example, the Benicia Gravity Hill. It's located there in Lake Herman Road, just a little bit off of Highway 680. If you go there, it's a traditional gravity hill. You're essentially going to have your car pushed. But what makes it different is the fact that this was done, that this location, it involved the Zodiac Killer himself killing some of his tragic victims. So not only will you get essentially Gravity Hill there, but you'll actually be able to visit a historic location involving the so-called Zodiac Killer. Are they pure coincidence in this case? The fact that there's something involving people pushing the car, and then in this case coming from the Zodiac Killer, the victims, it's up to you to decide. But if you go there, you will actually be witnessing, in this case, history that could be tied to the Zodiac Killer. The next example is the one called the Kaabas Gravity Hill. If you go there to that location, what's interesting about it is, and this is by a place known as the Morongo Indian Reservation, which kind of like makes you you have to be a little bit more careful on that part because that is more of like sovereign land, more private land than let's say public land. But in this case, if you go there and you park your card there at that location, the difference is you'll be at the bottom of the hill, but then you'll actually witness your car roll up a hill. That definitely stood out to me because if we're talking about an actual hill and then you're seeing your car roll up of it, that would freak me out. So if anybody happens to go there, the Kaabas Gravity Hill, again located at the Morongo Indian Reservation, test that out if you can, and then let us know like how that works because that would definitely, absolutely stand out. The next one there in California that has a weird variation is the Jammu Gravity Hill. This is there in San Diego, a suburb to be specific. It does have kind of like the hallmarks of a classic gravity hill, in this case involving train tracks, in this case involving children there as well. The difference though is this. If you go there, you have to be very careful though because you have to be absolutely sure, of course, that there's no trains coming. But if you go there and you park your car right on the train tracks, and this time though, you will hear, and this stood out to me, you will hear children screaming and laughing. The other versions of gravity hills involving children are that you'll simply have your car pushed by them. You will hear as well, but you will also hear those very same children screaming and laughing, I guess, around you. That would freak me out. So that's something that I would absolutely love to test out there at that location. And again, it's known as the Jammu Gravity Hill there somewhere in a San Diego suburb. The next one that stood out happened to be this one, the Livermore Gravity Hill. The various versions of it, in fact. It's like a multiple set of gravity hills there. But the one that stood out to me happened to be this. In this case, it has to do with these entities or these ghosts or whatever they are of these high school students. They apparently had a tragic circumstance there. Either a bus broke down, killing them there, or they drove off the side of the road, also killing them. Either way, though, if you go there and you test out at that road, and it's located at mile marker 157 on Patterson Pass Road. If you go there, park your car, wait for the usual thing, then your car will be pushed to the side. But in this case, the notion is that it's these two high school students who are doing so to get rid of you. Like in this case, they don't want you in that area. They're not pushing you out for your safety, not like the other versions of the gravity hills that we all know of. No, in this case, it's because these two high school students who died tragically, they were in turn coming from a post-prom, and wherever they were going towards their destination, of course it was tragically cut short, but even in the afterlife they're still trying to get to that location and they want to be left alone. So how about that? I've never heard of that version of, in this case, two ghosts just trying to push you away so that way they could always not be bothered. They just want to be left alone in that location as is. So that's a first in instance, and again, that's the Livermore Gravity Hill. The next one is the Moorpark Gravity Hill, and this one is located near Moorpark Community College. The reason why I picked this one is because, again, it has to do with school children, in this case being killed, but it was the way that they were killed that definitely stood out. You and I have all heard of either the bus going off the road, or in some cases the bus, I guess, being hit by railroad tracks. But in this case, it had to do with the children themselves kind of leading to their own deaths, because in this version, the school bus broke down. The children, I guess, they were told by the bus driver to get out to the back so that way they could push the bus towards a safer location. But by doing so, they left themselves vulnerable, because apparently there was a local farmer there in the Moorpark area that was either drunk or just not paying attention. Whatever was the case, they were driving recklessly, and when they did so, they actually slammed into the back of the bus, essentially pinning the children to the bus and then killing them outright. That's the first time I've heard of that version of, in this case, of a gravity hill, and how the children ended up dying. So what a way to go. If that's truly something that occurred, that's probably the worst, nastiest version of, in this case, the children being killed. But that is there, located in the Moorpark area. And then one final one, it's known as the Whittier gravity hill, again located in the California area, the Whittier, California area. This one stood out because not only is it close to a cemetery, but when you go there to that location, and this is really interesting, not only will you be pushed up a hill in terms of this gravity hill, but once you get to the top, and it seems like in this case your car will then go down the hill afterward, your car will stop. And even if you try to move it forward, and in this case, let's say, try to let gravity take over as you roll down the hill, interestingly enough, your car will still stop at the top of the hill where it would normally roll down. So let's say you're at the top of that hill and you're a little bit forwards and you're leaning forwards, and you know that in this case the car should be rolling down, but it's not. It actually stays as is, and it works for not only cars but bicycles. You can do this trick for your bicycle, and you can do this trick with a skateboard. So that definitely stood out as well. Definitely, that's one that I absolutely would want to test out at that location, because how freaky would that be? You're at the top of the hill and then you're trying to go down it. You know you should be going down it. You're probably like at a angle that's facing downward, and your car is still stopped. Something is stopping it outright. So that's creepy stuff. But that's it. Those are all the examples that stood out in terms of the weird locations there in California involving multiple versions of gravity hills, the more original ones, the ones that have these weird little twists to them. So alright everybody, if anybody knows any other unique gravity hills, anything else I might have missed, please post those comments below. Anybody have been there to those specific locations? Anybody in California maybe want to test them out later on? If you do so, let us know what the results are by posting those comments too. So alright everybody, thanks again as always. Take care.